Hello everyone. In this video, I'm following up to a previous video where I started animating a bouncing ball, a basic bouncing ball in Maya. So in this one, I'm going to continue with that, and I'm going to show a few techniques that will help you along the way and get a couple principles of animation incorporated into this animation. So I'm going to just play this through. And again, it doesn't look exactly like a nice bouncing ball would. If you ever look at some of these animated bouncing balls where people are doing them as exercises, you'll see that there's a lot missing. There's squash and stretch. I need to work on the slow in and slow out. I need to work on the timing, and I'm going to add some rotation. I'm going to stop that, just kind of show this really quick. So in the previous video, I showed this editable motion trail and showed these tangent handles. And I had heard from some people that they aren't able to select the end of this. It sometimes happens if you double click on the move tool and just reset the settings. So if for whatever reason you turned on symmetry, right? I'm going to turn on symmetry just to show this. I won't be able to select that. So if you just reset the move tool, you should be able to select that tangent handle and move it. When resetting the tool, if it doesn't reset object symmetry, you can just click reset here or just turn it off and then close that. And now I'll be able to go ahead and select those tangent handles at the end. It just means that it was trying to select something on the other side and it just can't do that, right? So it would be fighting itself. So that's one way to get these tangent handles to work. A couple people pointed out to me that they weren't able to do that, and that's how to get that to work. The other thing you need to do is make sure that you've set the proper settings, and I showed that in the previous video where you need to go into the settings, and I can just click here to the running guy, make sure sync timeline display is on, and the key ticks is set to smart at least, and that will allow you to kind of move these. Another thing that a couple people have pointed out to me is that when you move these tangent handles, sometimes you don't see the editable motion trail move like that. It's just usually when you're moving it a little too fast, it's just not updating, right? So if you just move it slightly, it should update. You can move it really quickly, and then when you let it go, it might update. If it doesn't, then you just need to kind of slightly move it just to get it to show up. So that's how you can fix those sort of issues that arise just by it not displaying. However, in this video, what I'm going to be showing you is the graph editor. And in the graph editor, I will be able to tweak this a lot more than I can with this editable motion trail. So I'm going to go up to Windows, and I'm going to go down to Animation Editors and Graph Editor. I'm going to open that up. And what the graph editor does, it's going to show me all the animation curves for the object that's selected. If I don't have anything selected, it's not going to show me any curves. Selecting that control curve around the ball is going to show me all the animation curves for the motion on that curve, on that control, right? So that control is showing me, it's what I'd animated, the motion of the bouncing ball, and this is going to show me the curves that are attached to that. So a couple things with this, when I select one of these keyframes, you can see the tangent handles on either side, and those are what I'm going to kind of modify. Now I could just go over here to the channels and I can show that. So just to point this out, this translate Y, they're all color coded. So the Y is green and you can see the animation curve is green. The translate X, it's red. So X is red, Y is green, and blue is Z. So on the animation curves, you can see that it's color coded with red. The translate Y, color coded with green. Now, just to point this out, the Y translate is just the up and down of the ball. It might look like the path of action right now, but it's not. It's just the ball going up and down. It's not it going left to right. The translate X is it going left to right. So in the translate Y, what I can do is I can actually mute the translate X. Just go to curves and mute channel. And then you'll see the ball just turn into up and down. It sets it up so the animation is just showing up and down. That's because the translate Y is still active and it's showing that. So if I were to play that through, you could see that it's just going up and down, right, until it stops. If I unmute this, you'll see that it re-adds the X back in, the X movement. And if I mute the translate Y, so curves, mute channel, I can see that it's just traveling left to right. That's the only thing it's doing is traveling left to right. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and unmute that. Right? So now I just see that. Now the translate Z, I shouldn't have any movement. Now if I accidentally moved it, for whatever reason, I was tweaking you know, the tangent handles, I'm going to see movement in the translate C, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all the keys. And by the way, when I select them, if all the other curves show up, it's not really what I want to see, because I want to be able to just select that and not see everything. It's because it's automatically loading. And so if you go to list and you turn off this auto load selected objects, now when I select those channels or those keyframes, you're not going to see all the other channels show up, right? All the other curves. So I'm just going to select those keys and press delete. And so I need one at the beginning and the end. I really don't need them at all, but I'm going to leave one at the beginning and the end just so they stay there, right? Same thing with rotation. I shouldn't have any rotation at this point, but I will be adding some. So I'm going to go to the translate Y, and I'm going to start playing around with these tangent handles to get a much better arc out of my curve. So I'm going to select these two keyframes, and I'm going to press F on the keyboard to frame them in this view. And I can use the regular camera tools, you know, hold down Alt or Option and middle drag to reposition this. And if I hold down the right mouse button, I can dolly in and out of that view, right? I can move it in and out, right? So I can kind of get closer if I want to do that. If you hold down Shift and Alt and middle mouse, you can actually move it from side to side, and then right click will allow me to expand it or contract it in that view, right? So that's a nice way to move around in these views. So here are the two keys where the ball hits the bottom, right? So that's 15 and 16. Now on those keys, and I can move this to see those, right? I have this tangent handle. Now the tangent handles I moved here did a pretty good job, but not perfect. I really want this tangent handle to be over here, and I'm just middle mousing and dragging to move it, right? I can also just click with my left mouse to do that as well. There's just a couple different ways to do it. But you'll see when I do that, I get this tangent handle that's moving with it. And the reason why is that they're unified. It's called being unified. The tangents are unified. You're going to see these, a few buttons over here. This one right here is breaking the tangent handles, and I'm going to hover over it until you see it. And then this is unify. So those two are basically toggles. Breaking it will allow me to take that tangent handle, and this one won't move, right? Unifying it means when I move this one, that one moves, right? And these are unified over here. So if I move that one, you see it move over there. And I don't want these broken, because I want to be able to, when I move one, I want to be able to move the other. If this right here is the slow in, this is slow out, and I want that to be smooth. Here, I'm not going to have slow in and slow out. These tangent handles give me the ability to modify the slow in, slow out. This is slow out, but I don't want slow out here, because this is the ball hitting the ground, and when it hits the ground, it needs to be going its fastest. When it leaves, it's also leaving with such force and energy that it's really fast. Then I want to have it slow down. As it reaches the top, it's going to slow down, and then it's going to fall back down. And it's going to reach its ultimate velocity right before it hits the ground. So I want to be able to take this and move it up, right? And then I'm getting a much better arc out of this, right? I'm getting my arc, which is really just the change, the value change from here to here over these frames. So I'm going to come back to this first one to kind of bring this up. If I'm on frame 1, this is where the ball is falling into the scene, right? I want it to be going slowest when it's at the top and fastest when it reaches the bottom, right? So when the line is more vertical, that's going faster. When it's horizontal, it's going slower. So I'm going to grab this tangent handle. I'm going to move it out just a little bit. I can modify the arc here, and I'm going to come to this one. This is what I kind of call fast in, because it's not slowing in. I want it to be able to hit the ground with force. It's going to be going its fastest until it hits the ground. That's what causes it to slow down, is hitting the ground. So I'm going to modify this so when it hits the ground, it's going the fastest. Then I want to modify this so it's going its fastest when it leaves the ground and then slows down, right? So this is slow in, this is slow out. Those need to be unified, and that's flat, because when it's flat, it's going slow. And when it's going vertical, it's going fast. So you can see it pitching down here a little bit, which means it's going to start slowing itself down, and nothing would really cause it to do that. So I need to modify this so that I can get that trajectory. Now, kind of coming back to here, there's a couple things you can do with this, right? So this one is unified still. So I can break that one. I can break those tangents. I also have it set to free tangent weight. If you don't, you're not going to be able to drag that tangent handle further away, and they're going to be unified, right? So the alternative is to lock the tangents. So if I lock them, right, then I can't change the length of it. I can manipulate it, I can move it, but I cannot change the length of that tangent. So I just go ahead and make sure that it's set to free tangent length, and these are broken. They're not unified. Down here at the bottom, right? Again, up at the top, that's fine. I want them unified. I don't necessarily need to change their length, but it's a good thing. I can control a lot more if I do that. Do not worry about what's right in the middle of these unless you bring this keyframe over. That's one frame, so nothing is going to show any change. You can see this little green line doing this. If it bothers you, sometimes it does, you can just flatten that out, right? I can just grab these because I have broken the tangent handles, right? So I can set it up like that. To kind of point this out, this handle needs to be not on this side of the green line, but on this side. So if you look at that, it's going to slowly take off and then pick up speed. I want it to take off with force and then start to slow down. So this tangent handle needs to be on this side of the green line. And I do that for every one of these. So I'm going to go along where every time the ball hits the ground, which is going to be right here at the base, right? I'm going to just go ahead and break those tangent handles, make sure that I can move the weight or the length. And then I can grab those tangent handles, move it up just a little bit, right? This one can just be flat. I can select this one, grab that tangent handle, bring it up a bit, right? And then I can get that arc to look a little bit better. Grab these, again, break those tangent handles, set these. The only time I want to break tangent handles is when I need to interrupt the direction and flow of the motion. So that's why I don't break these. I don't want these broken. I want them to work together, right? Now, if it's starting to look really flat, I can just grab these again, press F on the keyboard, and now I can kind of see it a little bit better. You know, I can see the arc a little bit better, and I can kind of tailor these to that specific arc, right? Oh, I didn't break both of those, so I'll do that. Bring that up a little bit. And then this one, I don't need to break it because nothing's going on over here unless I'm going to add more bounces. So now it looks like I've got them all broken. I've got the tangent handles going in the right direction, right? And it should be giving me the right kind of motion. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this. I'm going to just go ahead and play it. I'll move this away so you can kind of see it. So I've got a little bit more, a little bit better speed, nice slow in, slow out, right? And then my speed of my ball is kind of slowing down as it gets towards the end. Now I can also hold down K, just so you know. I can hold down K and scrub my animation this way. I can also scrub it here, right? If I hold down K, I can always scrub my animation. It's called scrubbing down here as well, and as well up here. So there's multiple ways to do it, but K is a nice key. If you're out here in the viewport, you can kind of scrub and see what's going on with your animation, right? So that's going to give me slow in and slow out. And it also gives me these nice arcs, and it follows my path of action. Now, the spacing between here and here is the overall timing that it's going to take to get, you know, do that one bounce. The spacing from here to here will be that bounce. The spacing from here to here, that bounce, and here. They're not going to be much different from one another. Usually what I do is I move these in just a little bit. So the spacing from here to here should be less than this. This should be less than that, and this should be less than that. So looks like this one could be adjusted just a little bit, but I can adjust my timing down here later if I need to, right? So I just want to point that out. The next thing that I want to do is I want to put in some squash and stretch into this, right? And so there's different controls on this particular rig that allow you to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where the ball is hitting at the bottom here. And you have this control right here that you can pull down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it down, and this is allowing you to do squash and stretch really easily. So the concept behind squash and stretch is that when the ball hits the ground, the energy is still moving, so the top of the ball is still compressing down into the ground. At the same time, I can't lose volume, so the ball spreads out, you know, out to the sides. You can kind of see that it's not losing volume, right? It's changing its shape, right? It's expanding from the center and compressing from the top. Now, don't push it too far. I want it to match the sort of trajectory of the ball. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to get it to right there. However, I want this to happen on the second keyframe. So on frame 16. So I just middle moused and dragged over to 16. If there was another key, it would have reset that. But I'm going to go ahead and press S on the keyboard on frame 16. Now I'm going to go back one frame. I'm going to go to where it says the translate Y, and that's this moving up and down. And I'm going to set that to 0, which resets that control. And then I'm going to key this. And I'm just going to right click and I'm going to key selected. So I'm just keying the translate Y. So that gives me the ability. So when it hits the ground, it hadn't started compressing yet. And then it starts squashing into the ground, right? And then as it takes off, I want to be able to have it stretch. So I'm going to take that control and I'm going to move it up and stretch it out some. And I'm going to press S on the keyboard again. Now I could just key this, but when you have just one channel selected and you press S, it's just going to key that one channel. So I'm going to come back way over here. And again, I'm going to, kind of look at the ball here, and I'm going to press S on the keyboard. And now it keys that. And I'm just going to look at what it's doing in terms of squash and stretch now. Squashes and stretches. Now maybe I want to move the stretch or the squash out a little bit. But the next thing I notice is that the ball is not sort of falling in its trajectory. It's just sort of going straight down and straight up, right? So it needs to be able to rotate. So I'm going to add some rotation at this point. So I'm going to grab this center. I'm going to press E on the keyboard, and I'm going to rotate this from just the control that's allowing it to rotate in the rotate Z, right? And I can set that if I want to. I can just manually enter the number, but I'm going to set it right there. And with rotate Z selected, I can just press S on the keyboard because I don't need to key everything. I just need to key the rotate Z. Now, if it's keying everything when you do that, it means that you need to go back and change the settings for animation so that it's syncing the timeline display. And I brought that up at the beginning of the video. So now it's going to rotate. I rotated it on a negative, so I'm going to rotate it in a positive so it goes the right direction. Right? And now, again, press S on the keyboard. Now you're going to see that it falls sort of in this positive direction. It's following that path of action. And then it hits the ground, right? And then it squashes. And then it starts to stretch. And now I'm going to when I get to the apex here, I'm going to rotate this way, right? Which is, again, rotating it in the Z. And I can set that to, negative 90 if I wanted to be exact. But I'm going to just set that, press S on the keyboard. And then when it falls this way, notice how it's falling back. Now I just need to rotate it back around. So I'm just going to rotate it this way. And I can just type in negative 180. And I am going to then key that one, press S on the keyboard, right? And now you'll see it's following that path of action and hitting the ground there, right? So I'm just going to look at this first one. See, it's all full. The ball is in its original shape. It starts falling, and then it hits the ground, and then it compresses, and then it takes off and stretches. Sorry, it squashes here, and then it stretches as it leaves the ground, and then it needs to come back to its original shape. And I put it to its original shape about right there. So I'm going to grab this control at the top. I press Q on the keyboard just so I can, I'm not going to have that rotate tool on. And I'm just going to set this back to 0. So that puts it back to its default position. 0. Select the translate Y, press S on the keyboard. Again, if I don't have any of these selected, right, if none of those selected, it's going to key everything. But I'm just choosing what I want to have it keyed, right, so I don't mess up any other keys. So now you can see it falls, squashes, stretches, returns back to normal, and then starts to rotate back, and I can do the same thing, right? So once it hits the ground here, right, there's the double key, there's 1. And if you select this, you can see that's where that 1 key is. And I'm going to select this. You'll notice that this one was on the bottom previously, and I didn't animate it, I didn't key it. But this one is the one that had keys before. But since it's flipped over, now I can use this one to animate. So I'm just going to, again, I can just press S on the keyboard to key it all, right? Nothing's selected out of the channels. And then I'm going to move 1 key forward, select that, press W on the keyboard, move it down, get some squash and stretch. And each time it bounces, the squash and stretch is going to be less, right? So it won't be as much as the previous time. So one thing to point out that when I move to this key, this is on the top. When I go one key over because I didn't set the rotations for the other control, the ball just flipped around, right? So this control is now at the bottom. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make sure that when I get to this point, that rotation is going to stay the same, right? So again, I'm going to go to the graph editor. So I'm going to go to Windows. I'm going to go to Animation Editor. I'm going to go to Graph Editor, right? And I'm going to look at this rotation. And so that's the rotate Z. And you can see what's happening here. It's continuing its forward rotation. What I can do is I can just grab all these keys and I can just move them down. Or I can get rid of them and then just start keying them over. So I can just get rid of that. I can get rid of all of those. And now it's rotating, but then it stops. So I'm going to keep having to rotate. I just deleted all the rotate Z keyframes after that because they were just keyed with my movement. And now I can restart those keys. So I'm going to click back here, move over. And now you can see that it didn't flip over, right? So now my control is here. So I'm going to go one forward and I'm going to squash this down. Press S on the keyboard. Oh, I just want to key translate Y. So S on the keyboard to just key that one. And then I'm going to get it to about right here. And then I'm going to stretch it out. So I'm going to move that control. So it's about right there maybe. Again, with that selected, press S on the keyboard. It just keys translate Y. And then I'm going to get to right before it reaches the apex, set that to 0. Select the translate Y label there and press S on the keyboard to just key that channel, right? Then when I get to here, when I get to the apex, which if I select this, I should see there's a key there, right? I want this to make sure that I'm rotating it. So I want to, again, be able to rotate this direction, right? And I can see that it's still rotating forward. The number is still increasing, right? Now I've got it rotated forward and you can see that this number is still increasing. So as it keeps rotating, you still kind of increase this number. Now, since I have the translate Y selected, I need to select the rotate Z. So I'm keying that. So I'll press S on the keyboard, move forward until it hits the ground here. And then if I just deselect it and select that control, I can see all the keys. That's where it hits the ground. And I need to be able to rotate it this way, right? And then see that that should be about 360. And I'm just going to type that in 360 degrees. So it's made one full rotation here, or backwards rotation because it's negative, right? And I'm going to press S on the keyboard, key that there, go one forward again. And now it's going to maintain that, right? Because I reset all the rotation keys before. And then I am going to press Q on the keyboard, select this upper control, do a little squash and stretch, which is going to be less than the previous one. And then I'm going to press select translate Y if I just want to key that one, press S on the keyboard, go one frame forward, right? I should have, that should be, yep, that's where squash, and then one frame back, set that to 0, key that, right? So now it's, you know, hits the ground when it's full size and then it squashes, go a couple more keyframes, and then I can pull that up just a little bit. I don't want it to stretch too much. And then press S on the keyboard, go a few more frames, get it to return back to normal, set it to 0, select translate Y, press S on the keyboard. Then I'm going to go to where it is reaching the apex and rotate it again, right? And I'm doing it very kind of quickly to get the motion and get the rotation. Oh, and it didn't rotate because I had translate Y selected. So I'm going to rotate it again, back this way, a little bit more. Press rotate Z, or not have everything selected and press S on the keyboard to key it. So now you see the ball is falling, rotating, doing squash and stretch, little slow in and slow out, right? And now I've got that whole thing set up where it's falling, 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 hits the ground, squashes, takes off, stretches as it leaves, returns back to normal, and rotates as it goes through, and then it repeats the entire process. Now I could go in here, maybe I don't like this kind of trajectory that the ball is moving at. Don't think that this arc is working quite well for me. I think it should be a little bit less. And then if I want, I can then select these and move them in. Or I can go to, again, Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. I can look at that translate Y, and I can manipulate these to come in just a little bit more, right? So that will help me. You can kind of see it's starting to change these. So I don't want to change them too much, but, you know, I just want it to be a nice arc. And it looks like this one needs to come down just a little bit. And it also looks like this here needs to be adjusted. You can kind of see these handles are kind of not quite flat. And so if you select the key and you start doing that, you're going to move the value. So I'm just selecting the handle and doing this. So you could start to see when I do this that it'll tweak what's going on in the path. Right? So this isn't affecting, you're not seeing too much effect right there. It's just because this is where it's flat on the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and play through it again. And you can see it's doing all the squash and stretch. I need to finish it up on the last bounce, but it's doing it squash and stretch. It's doing slow in and slow out, which is the goal of this, including the timing, the arcs, and the path of action. Those are all those principles of animation that apply to this bouncing ball. So I hope that helps. And all you'd have to do after that is you can play blast it and check out how your animation's running. And good luck with it.